Background, slow orchestral build-up. Sounds of waves and distant gunfire. Narrator. June 6, 1944. The world held its breath. Across the cold waters of the English Channel, thousands of ships moved silently under the cover of darkness. Inside them, young men, trembling yet determined, were about to step into history. This was Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion ever attempted by humankind. The day that would change the course of World War II. The day known forever as D-Day. It wasn't just a battle. It was a gamble, a fight to free Europe from the iron grip of Nazi tyranny. The odds were terrifying. The enemy was ready. The beaches were mined, the cliffs armed, and Hitler's Atlantic Wall stood like a fortress. But still they came, because this was more than war. This was the turning point of history. The world before D-Day, before that fateful morning. The world had been drowning in darkness for almost 5 years. From the fall of Poland in 1939 to the invasion of France in 1940, Adolf Hitler's forces had swept across Europe like wildfire. Britain stood alone, battered but unbroken. The Soviet Union was bleeding on the Eastern Front, and the United States had finally entered the war after Pearl Harbor, bringing its industrial might to the fight for freedom. By 1943, Allied leaders, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, knew one thing. To defeat Nazi Germany, they had to open a Western front. They needed to land in Europe, but where? After months of debate, one answer emerged. Normandy, a region on the northern coast of France. Why Normandy? Because it was less defended than Calais, and its beaches offered the best chance for success. Yet everyone knew, and it wouldn't be easy. The Germans had built an enormous system of defenses along the coast. The Atlantic Wall, stretching from Norway to Spain. Bunkers, machine guns, concrete walls, landmines, barbed wire. Everything designed to make any invasion impossible. Still, the Allies began planning, under the command of General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Codenamed Operation Overlord, the mission would require months of preparation, deception, and courage beyond imagination. The preparation for invasion. In the months before D-Day, the Allied world turned into one massive war machine. Factories in America produced tanks, planes, and landing crafts faster than ever before. In England, thousands of troops trained day and night, learning how to storm. Beaches under fire. But while soldiers prepared, another secret war was being fought, the War of Deception. Through a campaign called Operation Fortitude, the Allies tricked the Germans into believing the invasion would come at Pas de Calais, not Normandy. Fake tanks, wooden airplanes, phantom radio signals, all part of an illusion that would save thousands of lives. By early June 1944, over 150,000 Allied soldiers, 7,000 ships, and 11,000 aircraft were ready. This was not just a military operation. It was the hope of a world longing for freedom. On the night of June 5th, paratroopers from the U.S. 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions took off into the stormy skies. Their mission, to land behind enemy lines, cut off reinforcements, and secure key bridges. As they flew, lightning cracked the clouds. Many missed their drop zones. Some drowned in flooded fields. But still they fought on, lost in the night. Yet determined to strike the first blow for freedom, the invasion begins. June 6, 1944, or 6:30 a.m. The largest armada in human history appeared off the coast of Normandy. 5 beaches were chosen for the assault: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. The first waves hit the shore. At Utah Beach, things went relatively smooth. But at Omaha Beach, everything went wrong. The sea was rough. Many landing crafts sank before reaching land. When the ramps dropped, soldiers were met with a storm of bullets. Machine guns tore through the air. Men fell by the dozens. The beach was covered with smoke, blood, and chaos. One soldier wrote later, "It was hell. You couldn't think, you couldn't move. You could only crawl forward, but they kept moving. Step by step, crawling through the sand, using fallen comrades as cover. They climbed the cliffs, silenced the guns, and by sheer willpower, they took Omaha. Across all beaches, the story was the same: courage, chaos, and sacrifice. By nightfall, more than 4,000 Allied soldiers were dead, but over 150,000 had landed. The beachhead was secured. The turning point. D-Day didn't end the war, but it turned its tide. From those beaches, the Allies began their march across France. Within weeks, Paris was liberated. Within a year, Nazi Germany collapsed. But the price was heavy. Tens of thousands of men never returned home. They rest now beneath white crosses, facing the sea they conquered. General Eisenhower, in his message before the invasion, had said, "You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade. The eyes of the world are upon you." And truly, that day, the eyes of the world watched as ordinary men became heroes. The legacy of D-Day. 80 years later, D-Day remains more than history. It's a symbol of unity, sacrifice, and courage. It reminds us that freedom is never free, and that sometimes, one day can define the destiny of generations. The beaches of Normandy are silent now. Waves wash the sand where once blood and smoke ruled the air. But if you listen closely, the wind still carries their voices. Whispers of bravery, fear, and hope. We fought not for glory, but for the world that would come after us. That is why D-Day stands as the greatest turning point of World War II, because on that day, humanity chose courage over fear, and freedom over tyranny. The men behind the mission. You background steady march drums, faint radio static, wind howling. Behind every bullet fired on D-Day was a heartbeat, a man far from home, carrying the weight of the free world on his shoulders. They came from every corner of the Allied nations, the United States, Britain, Canada, France, Poland, Australia, and beyond. Some were farmers who had never seen the ocean. Some were students who had left their classrooms for the battlefield, and some were fathers who knew they might never see their children again. Private John Steele, a paratrooper of the 82nd Airborne Division, became a symbol of D-Day's chaos. Dropped miles off target, his parachute caught on the church tower in Sainte-Marie-Église. Dangling there for hours, he watched his comrades fight below, unable to move, unable to help. But he survived, and that small town became one of the first in France to be liberated. Then there was Major Richard Winters, of Easy Company, the men later immortalized in Band of Brothers. He led his small unit with calm determination, capturing crucial enemy artillery positions that were raining hellfire on Utah Beach. Winters once said, "I wasn't a hero, but I served in a company of heroes." And indeed, D-Day wasn't about one man. It was about thousands who stood together when the world needed them most. The German perspective. In background, low drums, echo of artillery in the distance. On the other side of the beach, the Germans waited, cold, tired, and confused. For months, they had expected an invasion at Calais, not Normandy. When the news arrived that the Allies were landing miles away, panic spread through the ranks. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, had warned Berlin, "If the Allies break through the beaches, the war is lost." But on June 6th, Rommel wasn't even there. He was visiting his wife in Germany. By the time he returned, it was too late. German troops fought with brutal efficiency, but they were outnumbered and overwhelmed. Their communication lines were cut, their reinforcements delayed, and their air support nearly destroyed by Allied bombers. Many young German soldiers, barely 18 or 19, faced an impossible choice: fight to the death or surrender. Even they, in those final hours, realized they were not fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting for survival. Duet. Aftermath, liberation, and legacy. Ja's background, gentle piano, slow heartbeat sound fades into distant cheering. As dawn rose on June 7th, the beaches of Normandy were covered with the wreckage of war, destroyed tanks, torn flags, and silent bodies lying in the surf. The price had been terrible, but the victory was real. Within weeks, Allied forces broke through Normandy and pushed toward Paris. By August 1944, the French capital was free. Crowds filled the streets, waving flags, crying tears of joy. The nightmare of occupation was ending. In the months that followed, the Allies advanced eastward, through Belgium, the Netherlands, and finally into Germany itself. Less than a year later, in May 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over, but for those who survived D-Day, the memories never faded. Many returned home as heroes, yet they spoke little of what they had seen, because they knew true courage was not in glory, but in enduring the horror and still moving forward. Today, the beaches of Normandy are peaceful. Seagulls fly where bombers once roared. Children play where men once died for a dream. And as the waves wash the sand, one truth remains: freedom, live letters from the front. Background, soft piano, sound of paper unfolding, faint wind. Narrator. Days after D-Day, letters began to travel across oceans, from the battlefields of Normandy to homes waiting, anxiously thousands of miles away. A young soldier named William Bradford wrote to his mother, "Mom, we made it." The beach was hell, but we held the line. "I don't know what tomorrow brings, but know that I'm proud to be here. If I don't return, tell Dad I did my duty. Some letters never reached their destination, stained by seawater, torn by shrapnel, or forever lost in the chaos of war. But those that did survive told stories not of conquest, but of sacrifice and love. Each letter was a fragment of humanity, a reminder that behind every uniform was a beating heart, a family, a dream. And though the guns have long fallen silent, the words of those soldiers still echo through time. We fought for tomorrow, yours, not ours. The eternal flame of courage. Background, distant waves and choir humming Amazing Grace softly. Every generation inherits the world left by those before them. The men of D-Day left us a world built on courage, unity, and hope. They didn't just storm beaches. They stormed fear itself. They showed that even in the darkest moments of history, light can rise from ordinary souls who refuse to surrender. Today, their graves line the cliffs of Normandy. Thousands of white crosses standing in perfect silence. Each one a story, a name, a promise kept. Visitors walk among them, some with tears, some with pride, all with gratitude. Because those men didn't fight for medals or fame. They fought so that we could live free. The music builds, cinematic crescendo. Narrator, final line. The wind still whispers their names. And as long as freedom endures, the courage of D-Day will never fade. Narrator, energetic close. This was D-Day, the greatest turning point of World War II. A story of sacrifice, brotherhood, and the day that changed history forever. If you believe their courage deserves to be remembered,
like, subscribe, and share this video.
To keep their legacy alive, because history isn't just the past. It's the heartbeat of those who dared to fight for the future. You fade out with ocean waves plus orchestral score.